So let's try to get started. So first, my name is Mark Dietrich. I'm a senior advisor with the EGI Foundation, and I'll be the moderator today. Hopefully I won't have that much to say. We're going to have some very interesting presentations from one remote person who is deeply involved with, from the European Commission, deeply involved with the creation and deployment of the EU node, the EOSC EU node in EOSC, which is a very exciting development. So he will update us on that. I have a number of EGI colleagues who will be joining us today to present their perspectives on the European Open Science Cloud. We, as the EGI Foundation, are quite involved, along with our partners in the EGI Federation, who are quite involved in a number of aspects. So we are well positioned to provide some of this information to you. And we're also joined by Daniel Gonzalez, who is from CapGemini, representing the Simpl development, as he will explain what that's all about. I know that many organizations, many projects are being asked to align with and adapt to Simpl. So he's going to share some insights about how that will feel and what that will look like and what some of the requirements are. But our starting point is Mr. Peter Szegedi from DG Connect, calling in from we don't know where he is, but that doesn't matter. He could be on Mars for all we care. That's the beauty of the European Open Science Cloud. It could be anywhere. Science happens without borders. So on that note, I'd like us to shift to his presentation. So if somebody could cue that up. Peter, I think we're going to be running that presentation from here. So you'll have to you'll just have to say next slide or something like that. No?
All right.
He can do it? Oh.
Shall I?
Oh, so yes, share? Peter, you can share. You can share. I changed that. I apologize. That's wrong. So you'll be sharing? Avviato? It's perfect. You just have to go to presentation. There we go. And I will leave the stage and leave it to you. Thank you, Peter. Just from a format standpoint, we're going to try to have quick presentations. I mean, not ridiculous, but we'll move along and have a couple of questions right after each presentation. But I'd like to defer most of the discussion to a panel Q&A at the end. And I'm going to ask all of our physically present people to join us at the front of the room, and we'll have a panel conversation, respond to questions, and also look at some specific questions from one of our presenters about virtual access. So I'll get off the stage, and Peter, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much for inviting me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Szegedi. I work for DG Connect Unit C1, which is called High Performance Computing and Applications. This is the new name of my unit, so you may wonder why I'm involved. We still look after some research infrastructures and infrastructures in general in the context of DG Connect. And we run the EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud file, together with the DG RTD colleagues that are more on the research policy side. But definitely Connect is involved, and we're helping them to put the EOSC and the whole EOSC idea and EOSC as a open science data space into the motion. So I was invited to talk about the EOSC EU Node, but I'd like to discuss a little bit about EOSC in general. So EOSC is, in one hand, part of the open science policy and the ERA policy action. And that's why RTD colleagues are very much involved in that aspect. But EOSC is also part of our data strategy, the European data strategy, because EOSC, we consider EOSC as one of our data spaces, primary for research and innovation. And in that respect, EOSC will fit into the overall concepts of data spaces, where we actually have to organize and somehow control and take responsibility on the various data sharing and data policy implementations within Europe. So EOSC is an essential part of that. So we're sort of splitting up the problem into spaces and different data spaces. But even within a data space, it's quite complex to tackle all the problems at once. The major challenge for EOSC is to become the web of fair data and interoperable services related to the data, so researchers can really find data and which are interoperable, reusable, accessible, of course, and can actually work with that data across disciplines and across countries. So that challenge cannot be addressed in one step. So we came up with the idea to create nodes in the EOSC data space. Other data spaces call these as hubs, other call them as aggregators, but the main concept is the same. So these nodes will have some sort of control and responsibility to bring data and services to the data space and to the users, and of course keeping the ownership and the decision making as much as possible close to where these data and services are originated from and who are the actual users of that data. So in order to make that happen, we have to create these nodes inside the data space, and those nodes will gravitate users, will gravitate data, will gravitate the related services, and help those to interoperate in their own way and somehow federate it together in a distributed environment. So that's what all EOSC is about. But what I'm supposed to talk now is just one node. So the Commission decided to step in and procure the first reference implementation of a node as such, and that's what we call the EOSC EU Node. The reason it's owned by the Commission at the moment and somewhat governed by the tripartite governance, where we have member states, the EOSC Association, and the Commission sitting around the same table and looking after the creation of the federation. And of course, the operation of the node. This fact, it means that the node, the EOSC EU node, is situated at the European level. Therefore, it must be multidisciplinary and multinational in terms of access and in terms of support for end users. Obviously, it's operated 24/7. So this is a production service that we put out. We have relations being a data space as being part of infrastructure in DigiConnect, of course, to Simpl, which is the smart middleware connecting other data spaces, other infrastructure resources we have. We can mention your HPC, of course. We're working on how to, tap into resources of your HPC from EOSC. But the whole concept is open. So this node, we put out this node at the European level, but there are obviously other national, regional, or thematic areas where these potential gravitational points can pop up and formulate a node. So this concept is now being discussed with the wider area stakeholders, and we're building up actually a federation of these nodes with the help of the EOSC EU node. All what I said is depicted on this picture. So again, at the top European level, we have the EOSC EU node. It doesn't mean that can only be one node at the European level. There might be other nodes at the European level. We are somewhat in a unique situation owned by the Commission and being part of the public administration data space somewhat as well, is that we can bring in public administration services and other horizontal services that we procured. So there will be a distinct role of the node, the EOSC EU node. But of course, we also paving the way for potential other nodes, regional, national, thematic, what have you, to be formulated on the same principle that we're using, the same architecture concept and the same principle that we are trying to apply and put in into operations in the EOSC EU node. And this process is going on. I guess in the program you will hear more about how we're supposed to build up the entire federation based on the node. I myself trying to restrict myself to the node first, which is coming up very soon, right? So the red line is supposed to show where we are at in this very high level roadmap that we started earlier this year or even before with the contract where we procured the services. And then we took over from the old EOS portal. We already launched a static website which gives some information. But now we are in the stage where the entire EOSC EU node, including all the services, has been delivered to the Commission. It happened last Monday. I'm happy to report about that. There is a full integration testing at the moment still going on before we can actually officially launch this and bring this to the audience. There will be a technical launch on 10th of October, and we're targeting the symposium, the EOS symposium later in the year to open it up to the public. We are on track with that, which as much as I can say now. Some of the architecture features. So in the EOSC EU Node, there are two major functionalities or parts. One we call the core. These are the federating capabilities. That's where we have federated identity management, we have resource catalogs, we have application workflow management, monitoring, accounting, help desk, other operational elements. So these are the essence of the node, and we believe these functionalities should be common across all nodes. So we are actually making these blueprints ready for others to create their own nodes. And we're also trying to make these functionalities available for other nodes to be used as a service or federating or interconnecting with those core federating capabilities. So we will create one coherent view of EOSC as a whole data space across the nodes. Of course, the nodes will act as access points to the federation. We don't believe in one size fits all model, right? So every node will have its own view to show the necessary resources and the view of EOSC to its particular community. But the important is that they all work on the same informational model and the same underlying structure and principles and concepts. And that's what we're trying to facilitate with the core capabilities. Of course, the core capabilities alone would be not sufficient to call the EOSC EU node a node, because it needs to have its own services, of course. So for that reason, we also procured some services, infrastructure services, as well as application services, which are quite commonly used across all research disciplines. Think about interactive notebooks, file sync and share solutions, large file transfer. You have to put files somewhere. You have to edit document simultaneously across users. Maybe you want to use a VM to deploy an application. If it's containerized, you can also support that with deploying containers, or you can move data in and out from our infrastructure. So those are very basic services which we procured, and those are available natively on the node, of course, in addition to any other services that we want to put on top. So how do we facilitate the creation of other nodes? The bottom of these are the summary of all of our artifacts that we're producing from the node. That's the bottom section of the diagram. And also the top part, which will make available for others to use or read. So this was the situation in June. This is now the situation in September. So we're populating these artifacts. These are related to architecture or topology, all these architecture descriptions. We have a lot of governance type of documents available, meaning the credit model or other policies like the user policy, access policy, or user access policy, sorry, or the acceptable use policy. So all these things will be gradually available for people to know about these once the node will be launched, of course. And then we're also making versions of these available to other potential nodes to be used. And that's what the EOSC Federation handbook and all the activities from mainly driven by the association, the EOSC association is about. So how we can actually make sure that the community will be ready to define their own nodes and join the federation based on the route or the pathway that the EOSC EU node puts into motion. This is my last slide with a short summary. I would like to introduce you a couple of new concepts, new compared to the usual pathway how researchers typically have to apply to get access to a research infrastructure or infrastructure services. Your application will be evaluated by a committee based on excellence, and then you might or might not be granted access to a certain period that you have to wait for. This is not the way how researchers typically nowadays see the cloud services working, right? So if you go to commercial environment, you swipe your credit cards, or if you're lucky, you have some free credits getting from somewhere, and you just start going, right? You don't do any application. You have a wallet, you have some credits on it, and you start going. So the exact same thing we would like to sort of replicate in the EOSC EU node. So that's why we came up with a virtual credit model and wallets for everyone. The users will see their attributes coming from with their federated identity, and based on the attributes, the user will fall into different policy groups, and those policy groups will automatically have some credits on their wallets, so they can immediately start working, right? So this is a new concept compared to how typically research infrastructure access to publicly funded research infrastructures work. We're excited about this. In order to see what services those various policy groups that you see the bottom can access to, we also come up with a tiered model. So there are services which are discoverable across the whole EOSC ecosystem, or findable via our resource hub and the metadata knowledge graph, where we have an inclusion policy in place. So that's everyone will be able to find, and if they're lucky, access those resources. That's tier 3. Tier 2 about onboarding services to the node, which is at the moment empty as we are starting now, where the onboarding process is not fully defined. After the symposium, we will put more information about it, how services and data can be actually onboarded to the EOSC EU Node. So far, everything which was there before can be found on our resource hub. We even extended the resource hub with additional services connected to Cordis, with software heritage, and other important repositories where we are harvesting from. So we have a very good tier 3 level. Tier 2 is empty, and tier 1 is the important one. Those are the native services that we procured for the node itself. As I said, application infrastructure services, and the various policy groups, as well as level of access to those. If you're a researcher in Europe, based on your attribute and home institution, checked via your home identity, you will have the chance to get credits to both application service and infrastructure services, and you can immediately start going. Of course, it's limited in time and limited in value or credits that you can use, but at least the infrastructure will be there, or the node will be there to make this happen for you. So we're excited to see how the users will get excited about this new notion or new concepts, the credits, the wallets, and the access to these services. As I said, we will launch this technically, at least, which will be live streamed for the public audience on 10th of October. And the symposium will be our big event where this will eventually, hopefully, be open for public. And after the symposium, real users can come and crack on the node with their basic experiments that they want to do. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks very much, Peter. A great presentation. I'd like to open up the floor if anybody has a couple of quick questions. We are shooting for time for a longer discussion at the end, but I'll start with Yuri, whose hand was up, and then the person right in front of Yuri.
Hello, Peter. Thank you for updating. Yuri Demchenko, University of Amsterdam. Also followed a lot of EOSC development. My question is, you mentioned that you contracted somebody to develop EU Node, EOSC Node. Is it secret which company, which association did this? Because it looks like very much professional. So my very good impression.
It's hi Yuri, good to hear you, at least if I can't see you. Indeed, it's not a secret, right? So we published once we awarded the contracts, we all published on the European Commission website the awardees. It's a large consortium in 3 different lots. It's a mix of commercials and publicly funded organizations. In the core services, obviously, we have the well-known ones, and we tried to procure the services from those providers who has the knowledge and some incumbent practice with the research community. So, for instance, Géant and the Géant Core identity services will provide the federated access. EGI services are involved in the application workflow management or the service management parts. There are other players, PSNC, who is offering for us underlying infrastructure. But we also have SaySpring, which is a Swedish commercial company, teaming up with their cloud resources and connected that to PSNC to sort of make a distributed cloud solution for us, which is reliable and operated according to security standard and other standards of the Commission. So we procured the services from them, but the services are then owned by the Commission and made available by the Commission to the users. Therefore, we have importance on security, data protection, proper operational procedures, standard compliances and stuff like that, which makes it a real production service.
Okay, next question and last for now. I'll get you, Anka.
Thank you, Serena Pop from CNRS. Thank you for the presentation. Could you please expand a bit on the users and user credits? Who are the users? Who is targeted? And how are the credits allocated? Can any researcher be a EOSC user? Thank you.
The short answer is yes, that's the intention. So we're using two authentication federations. One is the EduGain, right? So if your institution is a member of your national Higher Education and Research Federation and member of EduGain, then we'll be able to harvest your attributes from your home institution, and you will get access based on those attributes. The other option is come via EU login. So EU login is more targeting, of course, the public sector and also citizen scientists who can register there for an account. So for those that are not having the faculty or the staff or members attribute from their home identity, so they're definitely presumably not researchers, we'll get lower tiers. So either only have a view access or maybe just 100 credits to try some of our application services, launch a small notebook or use the file sync and share solution for personal storage. But those that are researchers based on their faculty attributes and from coming from an institutional identity will have at least 500 credits individually, or if they create a group of researchers where they can invite anyone, they can get 1,000 credit. And for those credits, we'll make available in the policy actually what they can get. But with those credits, they can actually, at least for 3 months, if not more, they can run experiments easily on infrastructure services, as well as using, the data sharing, the notebooks, the document editing, and all other features of the application services. We'll make this all available in the user policy document where we will read about it, and also it will be published on the website, of course, how the credits are allocated and what you can do with it if you are a researcher.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I'd like you to answer one more question while Levente is getting set up to start his presentation. You're number 2, right? Okay, so if you could come up, and meanwhile, Carlo, if you could give Anka the mic quickly.
Hi, Peter, Anka Hienola from Finnish Meteorological Institute. Thank you for your presentation. It looks bright and shiny. I can see the excitement. It was also about this credit because I kind of don't understand. So what happens if within 3 months I'm running out of the credits? How do I continue my work?
So the credits replenish every 3 months. You will set back to the original amount of credit, but the number of credit limits you how many resources you can get in that given 3 months period, right? So you cannot move credits from one period to the other period, but you will always, after the 3 months, you will be always reset to the original amount of credits. So this is actually your responsibility as a researcher, how you manage your available credits. You can have some peaks for a month or 2, but then maybe you have to free up your resources for others. We have to fit, of course, everyone who's interested into the given limited resources that we have. Or if you managed it in a way that you remain roughly under those 500 credits if you're individual researchers, or 1,000 if you are not, that can be done. Of course, we will have an offline process to request more credits, right? So we opened it up, right? But that is not automated then. So if you request new credits or any time extension to your existing environment, you have to come via help desk, submit a ticket, and that will be looked at by someone and will be decided. The major policies are for the credits are first come, first serve. We don't have any better, and use it or lose it. So if you don't use your credits, you booked, you got one, and you're not using it, we realize in the first months that you have 5% or less usage or anything across, we will remove your credits.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Levente Farkas, EGI Foundation, Cloud Solutions Architect. I'm overseeing all the technical contribution of EGI to this new EOSC EU Node. Yeah, it's okay. Before I talk about the EGI's contribution to EOSC, I would like to just add to what Mr. Peter Szegedi said and extend his summary of what EOSC and the EOSC node is. Let's start with the definition of EOSC, because maybe not all the audience is familiar with it. So first, the acronym stands for European Open Science Cloud. But what is it? Well, before we attempt a definition of what EOSC is, maybe let's first try a short reminder of what the old EOSC was. This was developed by the project EOSC Future, and in very simple terms, it was a giant catalog of research products, data sets, papers, etc., and services. All of which, or at least all of the services, were contributed by external parties. Well, the new version of EOSC, delivered by this procurement contract, keeps the catalogs, but also includes some services that the EOSC users can use out of the box, as they will be delivered as part of the EOSC EU Node. These are fully managed infrastructure services, such as VMs, containers, etc., or application services like notebooks, storage, etc. You saw these in Mr. Peter Szegedi's slides. I will just have them shown in a second. So with this in mind, a definition should be in order. Well, EOSC is or at least this new version of EOSC is a system of systems of data and services. Well, research-oriented services, which then researchers can use to store, share, process, analyze, and reuse research outputs within and across disciplines and borders. So this would be the definition. Now, let's see. What this new way of going towards federated approach to this new version of EOSC, what that means. Well, this would be, the EOSC Federation would be a network of interconnected EOSC nodes. And obviously the first node, as was presented earlier, is this EOSC EU Node, which is promoted and funded by the EC via this procurement project. The EOSC Federation is enabled by these federating capabilities of the core services which make up the EOSC EU Node. This is very important because these basically allow external parties to either just consume these services as they are, or in a more advanced scenario, to connect them with similar services of their own, facilitating building out this network of EOSC nodes. And then in this first EOSC EU node, EGI delivers about half of the core services with federating capabilities. One omission, I think, on Mr. Szegedi's slide, listing the core services which have these federating capabilities. One omission from there is the order management system, which in my opinion should also have federated capability. Well, to finish up with this, I would just like to draw your attention to this document that we recently wrote, and it summarizes EGI's contribution to the EOSC Federation. You can use the QR code, and if you don't do it now, you can find it in the presentation later. Now, just in a few more details about how the EGI Federation and the EOSC Federation come together to materialize in this new EOSC EU node. First, EGI participates in designing, development, and provisioning of the EOS core services in collaboration with research infrastructures, e-infrastructures, and other EOS stakeholders. For us, this EOSC EU Node and this federated approach, or this network of EOSC nodes that are to come, we view them as a platform to advertise and offer our services, even if sometimes this could be immediately viewed as a competition or competitor to our services. But then we could conceive some scenarios on how we could, just through the EOSC EU Node, to, for example, complement the compute capacity that is offered as built-in services into the EOSC EU Node. We could just add more capacity to that, similar to these services coming from lot 2 and 3. But what is also possible is that, and we aspire to do that, is that EGI could build a new EOSC node and participate in this EOSC Federation. And this way, we could bring distributed compute and storage capacity from our members to support the research communities. This is just a visualization of how the components of the EOSC EU Node fit together. And it's important, before I get into details of where exactly we are contributing. So you will see that at the bottom, we have this core platform. These are all the core services delivered by lot 1. Then on top of those, infrastructure services coming from lot 2, application services coming from lot 3. Obviously, these empty boxes is what you also saw in Mr. Peter Szegedi's presentation. These are future services that are to be onboarded after the EOSC EU Node is officially launched. And obviously, on the top, we have a front end that keeps everything together, so that EOSC end users do not have to directly talk to these services, but instead they have a nice user-friendly interface to use. And now into the details. Well, as was already mentioned, lot 1 is building the core services that constitute the EOSC EU Node. EGI is contributing multiple of these core services like help desk, monitoring, messaging, accounting for services, with an asterisk here that there's another component that accounts for research products that provided by OpenAIRE. We account just for services. And then other components, so not entire services, but just components of these core services, such as for AI, the persistent identifiers, which are parts of the catalogs. What else? The application workflow management, through which workloads are deployed to the infrastructure services provided by lot 2. And the validation of these blueprints on which these workflows, also called tools, are going to be deployed. Besides that, another very important tool that supports operating such a complex platform is the SMS, or the service management system. Well, this tool ensures that everything is done according to some well-defined procedures by people with clear roles and in a timely manner. EGI brings its expertise in service planning, delivery, operation and control based on FITSM, and delivers the SMS for all the lots. Another thing which also falls under this service management box in the bottom right corner would be the a comprehensive verification and validation plan for the entire EOSC EU node. That will ensure that in tight collaboration with the SMS, all the component services that make up this EOSC EU node are rigorously validated against the industry standards, against the EOS platform's specifications, and pass integration and acceptance tests before they are put into production. This was a clear requirement of the tender for Lot 1, and we are delivering on that. And last but not least, EGI is responsible for the security coordination of the EOSC EU node, starting with drafting a comprehensive security policy, a security plan, and ensuring that security incidents do not happen, or when they happen, they are handled in a predictable and robust way. Of course, this requires not just to have a plan, but also includes a consistent and continuous effort to prevent place. And although I said last but not least, one thing that I forgot is that EGI is also contributing to the project's communication and outreach. And then to switch to Lot 3, here, these are the application services. Here we deliver the Jupyter Netboard, interactive Jupyter Netbooks, and we also provide the service management system. This service management system was also adopted by Lot 3. Therefore, EGI provides all the service management systems for all the lots. However, the Lot 1 SMS and the Lot 2 plus 3 SMS are separated for contractual reasons. Just a very quick summary of how we stand on delivering on our promises. I'm happy to report that all the deliverables that EGI was responsible for, delivering them at the end of Q1 and Q2, we delivered all of those on time. All of them got accepted. And then I won't get into the details of all the core services where we are contributing, but let me just say that we delivered everything on time. All our services are online. We are just waiting for the EC's green light to put them into production. And here I would like to just thank all the EGI members that contributed to this. It was a huge effort. Thank you very much. Let's just see this in production and launched as soon as possible. And finally, a few words about the future. Well, this is very simple. We are entering this production phase now. As it was mentioned earlier, the EOSC EU node will be launched later this month in Berlin, where we expect the first users to arrive. That will be the first real test. And then from that point on, it will be just to operate it until 2027. This is a slide which I debated whether or not to include, but since this is the EGI conference, let's just go very quickly to what we learned from this procurement. Well, the first and most obvious conclusion is that AI is a glue for everything, especially for such a huge platform. And it is the first core service which has federating capabilities. Therefore, I strongly encourage my EGI colleagues to refine and extend The other area where there were improvements, and I would like to somehow incorporate them back into the service management system that we use in EGI, is that these improvements and automations to the change management processes specifically would make a huge improvement to how we deliver services in EGI. And QA framework, the official name is verification and validation activity. We built a QA framework for that. This is triggered by the changes in the change management in the SMS. And I think this is vital to be adopted in EGI, first to improve our services, but then also could become a service that we offer to others. So we are already looking at ways on how we could take advantage of this. And with this, I conclude my presentation. As it was said, questions if you have any.
So we have time for one question, and then Diego, if you could get ready. So Raymond, please.
Thanks. Peter just said that the EOSC EU Node would be available 24/7. Which are going to deliver the services. We are used to 5 times 8 working hour support. Does this mean that this is going to change and that the EGI will also give 24/7 support, for example, the help desk?
No, the support is tiered into multiple layers. It will be available in business hours, if I'm remembering correctly. Mm-hmm. However, the rest of the services, we deployed new instances of all the services. So these will be available 24/7 as the Commission expects it. Actually, these are commercial contracts with the Commission and include very aggressive service level requirements that we need to meet. So the service, we are forced to operate them 24/7 and respond in given timeframes to all help and support requests. So I hope this answers your question.
Thanks very much, Levente.
Thank you.
So we'll switch over to Diego Scardaci, who is architecting the next version of EOSC in EOSC Beyond. So Diego's lead of our TST, Technical Service Support Team at EGI, and over to you, please. And we are running out of time, so.
I understand. Thank you very much, Mark, for the introduction. Okay, we discussed with Peter's and Levente's presentation about the EOSC EU Node, the most recent evolution in EOSC, but it's also important that you're aware of that we are already working for the next steps. There's a project, a new project, EOSC Beyond, that has started in the April of this year, that is already designing and implementing the future version of the core services. The aim of this project is to provide new EOSC Core capabilities that would simplify the creation of scientific application in EOSC, also with resources that are coming from multiple EOSC nodes. The EOSC Beyond project has been designed with the concept of EOSC nodes, so it's already been conserved with this new concept part of the project, and it will be also, I would say, very important because we planned a number of activities to piloting the setup of EOSC nodes. Then this would allow research communities to test and validate this new model and understanding how they can operate an EOSC node. This slide is showing you the project fact sheet very quickly. This is a 10 million project started this year. It lasts 3 years. And very important, the consortium is made of more than 30 partners with representatives from the main European infrastructure, technology providers, and the research communities. EGI is leading it. The main objectives of the project. First of all, as I told you earlier, the project is in charge to enable a European network of pilot EOSC nodes. So the project will be the first I would say, initiatives that will create a network of EOSC nodes in pilot mode and would allow to better understand how this model can work in EOSC. Then the project will create new core services, in particular to accelerate the time to produce scientific applications with software libraries that would facilitate the integrations between components, and in addition with a component of new core services that will enable the machine composability and the dynamic deployment of resources in the EOSC. These new core services are named the EOSC Integration Suite, that will be made up of software libraries to integrate resources, and the execution framework that will allow users to deploy on the fly services and resources available in EOSC. In addition to this, to set up the network of pilot nodes, the project will create a test bed for EOSC that will be offered to the whole EOSC communities, where researcher communities can test the EOSC capabilities, and the resource provider can use it to validate and work on the integration with the EOSC environment before moving into the production instance of EOSC. This is offered to the internal pilot of the project, but also to all the research communities and the European project working in EOSC. Finally, the project has also very important activities related to the connection with the space world. We have planned the piloting activity to test and validate the integration between the EOSC middleware and the Simpl middleware that will be the middleware that will power the European data spaces. In this slide, I summarized in a graphical format the main activities of EOSC Beyond. EOSC Beyond will create this next generation of core services with the aim to support the setup and the federation of EOSC as a network of nodes. And you can see there are 3 main pillars that we are working on. The first one is improving the current EOSC core services. So the AI, the resource catalog, the monitoring, we will add new capabilities according to the user requirement. The second pillar is about the EOSC execution framework. And in this context of this, we will evolve the interoperability framework, the EOSC interoperability framework, to enable machine composability and the automatic deployment of workflow in the EOSC resources. And finally, the third pillar is the EOSC integration suite that is the new core services that will be made up of software libraries that would facilitate the connection and integration between EOSC resources. All this development altogether will allow us to create a new enhanced EOSC platform reference architecture that could be used to implement other EOSC nodes. The project will set up the EOSC Core Innovation Sandbox, that is the test bed that I mentioned earlier, and we will run a number of pilots from national, regional communities, infrastructure, thematic communities, to set up pilot nodes and to understand how this can work together. Now, to better clarify the position of EOSC Beyond in the overall EOSC scenario, in this slide, I tried to identify what are the main contributions of the project to the establishment of EOSC. First of all, with respect to the EOSC EU Node, the main objectives of the project is to improve and extend the set of EOSC Core services to shape the EOSC EU Node version 2.0. So our target is not the current EU Node, but the new version. And we are developing new core services. We are experimenting a new solution to give an important input to the Commission to develop the technical specification for the version 2 of the nodes. Anyway, we are establishing, would say, a collaboration with the current EOSC EU Node consortium, with the idea that is there are the possibility to adopt minor improvements in agreements with the Commission and with the implementing entities of the EU Node. This could happen. This might be a possibility also considering there is a big overlap between the consortium, the EOSC Beyond consortium, and the consortia that are behind the EU Node, but something is not granted. About the establishment of the EOSC Federation, I think the most important contribution from EOSC Beyond is about the development of a model for a technical architecture for the EOSC Federation as a network of nodes. This, we are doing some work already on this, and we will use the EOSC Pilot Nodes that we will design, deploy in the coming months to better understand how this technical architecture should be shared. And this pilot node will be test users that also will adopt, test EOSC EU Node services. Also, in particular, because we are talking about establishment of a network of EOSC nodes, we would like to understand what kind of connections between nodes are of interest for the research communities. Very quickly about the EOSC Federation technical architecture, as we just discussed, as we know EOSC now is moving towards this model that is made up of a federation of nodes. EOSC Beyond is working to model how these different nodes should work, to define what the federating capabilities should be, and how nodes should connect to each other. EOSC Beyond is also working on modeling the EOSC node service structure, and the idea is to define another model of the technical architecture for the EOSC Federation as a network of nodes, according to the requirement of the pilot nodes and the users. We would like to identify federating capabilities that are of interest for research community and suggest them for adoption in EOSC. In this context, we are not working in isolation. We are also a member of EOSC and initiatives of the EOSC tripartite to write down the EOSC Federation handbook. And in the context of this initiative, we would like to be able to say giver and taker. Giver, bringing to them the result of our project. Taker, gathering feedback for the governance that could help us to improve the models that we are developing. In this context, we have planned to deliver a paper that with the first concept around the EOSC Federation technical architecture in this month. The paper is almost finished. We are reviewing it internally, and this paper will, I would say, bring clarity in the EOSC words with a clear definition, with the clear diagrams that would explain how an EOSC node should be structured, with the clear process to define federating capabilities, and also with a clear definition of what a federating capability is, because it's a concept that is not fully understood yet. This will be a live document that we will publish for community feedback, and the idea is to iterate more times over this document, and this will, I would say, converge in an official deliverable the project has to complete in the summer of the next year. Now, some few words about the EOSC pilot nodes. We have 8 pilot nodes embedded in the project, funded by the project, 3 regional nodes, 4 thematic nodes, 1 infrastructure. And we are actively working to identify more pilots. We are establishing collaboration with the EOSC project, other research infrastructure, and we already identified 4 additional pilots that are interested to test this new model that would be the basis, the foundation to set up the EOSC. For these specific activities, we organized a workshop in June in Krakow, where we started to define the roadmap, the technical roadmap for each of the pilots that we are supporting. I think it's important that to highlight that one of our objectives is to try to identify use cases that involve multiple EOSC nodes. That I would say this would be a way to validate this network of nodes models. We are using for the same bottom-up approach to identify connection between nodes, including the EU nodes. And when we identify them, we from these user stories, we get a service requirement and we develop the use cases that will be supported by the project. This is an effort in progress. I put here as example the user stories we have developed for the EOSC Pilot Node, but in general, we already identified 46 user stories requiring services to work together across multiple nodes. This is a very nice slide. It's still an initial analysis, but this I think is also of interest for Peter. This table shows the interest of our pilot nodes with respect to the federating capabilities that will be exposed by the EOSC node when they are in production. This connection will be tested by our pilot nodes, firstly in the sandbox, the project will set up, and then directly with the EOSC node according to the AOP of the node, of the EOSC nodes. Then, to conclude my presentation, I'd like to show you a very simple example that can help you to better understand the concept of federating capability in EOSC and how different nodes can collaborate to support more challenging use cases. In this case, we have the example of the EOSC node that is used by some EOSC users to access some cloud resources that is connected in a federation to the federating interfaces delivered by the application workflow management to an EGI node that is delivering other cloud resources. So the application workflow management can work as integration point towards other cloud infrastructures that are connected via standard interfaces exposed by the VM service, and according to the kind of input the user send, so according to the technical requirements that are behind the use case support of the users, the application workflow management can understand if the resource of the cloud nodes are enough, or maybe if there is the need to scale up towards other nodes. If this is needed, this can be automated. Obviously, we need agreements between the EOSC node and the EGI node to make this automated, but this can be easily automated from a technical point of view, and the AVM can deploy the data analysis workflow of this EOSC user in part on the EOSC node, in part on the EGI node. This example can be also inverted, because when we have established this connection, also EGI user accessing EGI resources can scale up on the EOSC node, for example, not only to access cloud resources, but maybe because they have to process some data that are available in the EOSC node, and then it's better to process them with some resources that are close to this data with some EOSC node resources. So the model can be bidirectional. It can include how many nodes that we want. That's all from my side, and if you have any questions, please.
Thank you, Diego. And I think we're still running out of time, so we'll take one question and then we'll move to the next presentation, please. Any questions? Oh, I thought you were.
Yeah, very nice seeing that you developed the technical architecture for EOSC Federation, but this also means a quite high level of technology knowledge. Do you plan to some training or recommendation for developers?
Yeah, I would say at the current status of the art, we are still working quite high level. So we are still working on the model. We have not yet entered in the specific details of each core services. Anyway, this is something that will come later. And the idea is that I would say, having an overall technical architecture, but this should be also, I would say, come together with documentation, specific technical documentation, in particular describing the interfaces for federating resources for each of the core services that will be delivered by the project. So our aim is to have an overall documentation that can help you to understand if I want to connect with the application workflow management. This is the interface, these are the PAI, these are the specification. I can follow them.
Okay, we'll take one quick question from Costas and Daniel, if you could make your way up.
It's not a question, it's more like adding up what Diego said. EOSC Beyond will propose solutions, ideas, and the idea is we're going to have the what we call EOSC Core Innovation Sandbox, where we are going to demonstrate these ideas and we welcome everyone to come in and test them. We are not going to operate or develop something in a closed ecosystem. We are planning to do this as open as possible and do rapid developments so that we can demonstrate the new functionality that's needed, right? And through that, more documentation will come, more experience will come for the end users, and we jointly develop the architecture. As Diego said, we are now in a really high level proposing ideas and discussing them. In every forum we propose this. We even wrote a paper how we can do that, how we approach. Diego and I participate in a number of different fora, and we present these ideas so that we get feedback on the high level and before we start implementing. From then onwards, as soon as we start having something, the idea is to demonstrate it and to show it to everybody and get feedback and reiterate.
I'd like to welcome Daniel Gonzalez from CapGemini to the stage. He's going to tell us about the state of play on Simpl and EOSC. So over to you, please.
Thank you, Mark. I promise to keep it simple to have some time for the discussion. My objective for this presentation is twice. First, for you to understand what Simpl on a high level is, what's the European Commission thinking about Simpl. Second one, to give some preliminary results of what we have done during this year with Peter. So I also wanted to say hi to Peter online, specifically for EOSC. So let's start. So I would like to start by recalling what's the objective of the common European data spaces that the European Commission has set. And it's basically to make more data available for use, reuse across Europe. For that, European Commission has, in the last years, has identified several sectoral data spaces and has funded some of them for their development. EOSC, as you have seen from the presentations from Peter and on the EGI colleagues, is one of them. And basically the idea is that these data spaces should be able to promote data sharing, identifying use cases for data services, and as well, do it in a secure manner in Europe. A data space at the end is the tool to enable this data aggregation, data providing, and make the data interoperability more easy for different data spaces. However, this concept is a new one, and it has not been completely universally defined what the data space is. And for that, the European Commission has started funding Data Spaces Support Center to give support to data spaces on how to set standards, how to set up policies, how to enable an initiative of data to start sharing data and doing across several sectors. And Simpl is one of these parts. Is Simpl as a middleware is a solution that should help new data spaces to develop, to understand how to have the core components to start doing data interoperability, and as well to support other actual initiatives and to connect with other data spaces. So what is Simpl at the end? Quick definition of Simpl. Simpl is the open source smart middleware that enables cloud-to-edge federations and all major initiatives funded by the European Commission. 4 points here: open source, because for a public service, it must be an open source. Middleware, because it will support different applications that are beneath the operating system and will support a seamless operation between infrastructure, data, and applications. Cloud-to-edge federations is one of the main focus of the Simpl middleware software, and all major data initiatives, because we're discussing today about EOSC as a data space or an initiative, but it's just the first case. The idea is that the Simpl should be kind of the backbone for the European Commission to different data sharing initiatives. At the end, value proposition from Simpl is to be first, to not start from scratch. So basically, we're building up with a lot of current developed initiatives from different communities and different data spaces. It will be focused on cross-border, cross-country interoperability of data across Europe. And basically, it will allow data exchange by trying to reduce the taxpayers' contribution for these kinds of initiatives. Simpl has 3 major products, the Simpl framework contract from the European Commission. The first one is Simpl Open, is basically the software, the stack software that is being developed. Besides Simpl Open, there's also a Simpl Labs solution that's kind of a playground, a sandbox in which the different initiatives and data spaces can start piloting and testing and see how this software could be and could provide some support and some use cases for specific data spaces. And finally, we have Simpl Live. And Simpl Live has been kind of joining and supporting specific data spaces to understand what do they need for implementing Simpl for their specific use cases. During this year, the European Commission funded 6 different data spaces studies. One of these was EOSC, and that's what we have been working with Peter and the team the last months. On a nutshell, how is the architecture of Simpl thought about inside a data space? There should be a centralized component, there should be decentralized components. Simpl should be allocated as in a repository, on a cloud repository that could be downloaded, and yeah, either data providers, infrastructure providers, application providers, end users, data consumers should be able to integrate to this repository and allow this data interoperability within a data space. Plus, in a later moment as well, to allow this interoperability not only within a data space, but with other data spaces. So for example, for the EOSC initiative, there would be an interest to exchange and be able to collect information from other data spaces, such as Initiative Destination Earth or Public Procurement Data Space, the European Health Data Space. This could be something that Simpl should be able to support. And it's basically one of the needs and the benefits that Simpl would provide to different data initiatives and data spaces. What we have done during this year in terms of architecture is to set up kind of the backbone for what the conceptual architecture is. Right now, we have a stable architecture that should be included into an MVP that will be launched end of this year, beginning of January 2025. With specific administration, data, and infrastructure services, and as well supporting the governance setup of an initiative or a data space. This is quite important because the idea is that the European Commission should be able to support new data spaces, new data initiatives that at the moment, at the beginning, do not have anything or do not have any basic components for onboarding participants, for doing cataloging, for set up contracts across data providers and data consumers. So there should be kind of a software, a stack software that would support from scratch these initiatives. For the other data spaces that are already conceptualized and they're already live, Simpl could support as well in a modular way with some of these specific services. Good. So what have we done so far? Moving on the feasibility study for EOSC. We defined a methodology in which we start by collecting, understanding what are the requirements that Simpl Open is providing. Right now, we had a lot of focus on onboarding of participants, cataloging, adding resources to a catalog, searching in a catalog. Then we move on to assess the specific data space to understand what are their current capabilities, their current characteristics, what would Simpl would be a benefit for these data spaces. And then in these feasibility studies, we have been mapping the needs from the data spaces, needs for additional requirements with what Simpl Open is providing. One of the main ideas from the European Commission is that this process of developing Simpl should be in an open feedback between what we call Simpl Open, the software, the stack, the actual development, and Simpl Live. And those are the requirements from the initiatives and the data spaces. So this is something that could be included as well. And after mapping, understanding needs, gaps, and so on, we conclude, we present kind of an integration scenario, a roadmap that could be implemented by the European Open Science Cloud. And we present, end of this year, a study with some recommendations on how to move on with integration on Simpl. Two remarks on what we have done with Peter and with EOSC. So during this exercise, we had a focus on trying to understand which business processes that are being supported by Simpl could be as well in relevance for the European Open Science Cloud. And one of the first things that we managed to understand is that there is kind of a high relevance match between what Simpl is providing and the processes that are relevant as well from EOSC. Going from up to down, so we have the setup of governance authority of the data space, supporting ID trust, catalogs, and vocabulary, onboarding on participants, either consumers or data providers and users as well, looking into the catalogs, providing contracts between contracts for monetizing data between data providers and data consumers are in quite relevance for Simpl. There are as well specific additional business processes that are in need for EOSC. For example, the node enrollment process. We know that this is quite a specific and quite important for EOSC, and that there is a lot of autonomy between the different nodes of the European Open Science Cloud. That's something that is as a specific requirement that the Simpl Open software team should look like, how to move on, and as well the application management services. So we have mapped this information, and based on this information, we proposed a preliminary integration scenario. As mentioned here, these are our preliminary results. We're still validating them with the European Commission to present a roadmap end of this year. But one of the main cases that we see, the use cases that we see for EOSC would be to ensure that Simpl Open enable data spaces. Let's say there's a data space of European health or public procurement could be interoperable with EOSC. And this would allow integration and sharing data across different European data spaces. Key considerations, constraints that we have. One of the points is, so we're focusing on the EOSC EU node for the initial integration, not in the other nodes. We want to understand with Commission how to set up first this EOSC EU node, and based on that, move on based on the development of Simpl. There are dependencies on external data spaces that implement Simpl Open as well. So it's not about only that EOSC is available for implementing the agent, but as well that other data spaces do the same. And where do we see that this could provide benefits? So we just highlighted at the right part of the slide, metadata management and discovery to provide synchronized vocabularies of the EOSC EU node in terms of the security and compliance as well. Data ingestion and transformation, interoperability as said with other data spaces, supporting the governance authority for understanding how to support the enrollment of other nodes, and as well provide personal data handling capabilities for requesting and using data from other data spaces that will be relevant for them, thinking about health, skills, data space, and mobility. What's come next, and this is an invitation for you. You can as well, as developers or as part of the research institutes, engage with Simpl. You can join us on our social medias, X and LinkedIn. We have several events in the next quarters to present what we have done with Simpl. There is a Simpl annual community event planned during the first quarter of 2025. We will give some surveys about expectations and satisfaction about what has happening here. And you are also invited to give us feedback on the requirements that we have been providing and developing for Simpl. How is this possible? So since 2 weeks, we have a Simpl Live website. It's already live. This you can follow the link in the slide, and there you will be able to understand the different news about Simpl, discuss about what are the requirements, get feedback to understand how the development process is going, and yeah, basically you will be able as well to get all this information in the following QR code. Here is quite important to make this is something we want to bring you in this community and get your feedback on how do you think Simpl could support the EU's EOSC initiative. Thank you very much, and yeah, happy to get some questions.
Well, thank you very much. One question. Somebody we haven't talked to already, and perhaps Daniel, you could join us here. I don't know if this might be live.
Hello. Okay, so I'm Mario David from LIP and participating in EOSC Beyond and several other projects. I would like to ask a simple question. Simpl is a new development of middleware, and if yes, how does it compare? Let's take a simple case. Identity Federation, with all the Identity Federation that we have in place and for several decades now.
Thank you. So yes, it's a new development. So we're building this code as new, but we're reusing and enabling compatibility with existing solutions. For example, for identity, it is based on EU logging and a key clock as well. So it is something that should support and allow existing data spaces and existing initiatives to be to follow these common defined standards to use them. So it's not starting from and support these solutions for IDN management and cataloging.
What does it have with, for example, the EGI check-in, for example, which is as well? I mean, this is again the same question. How does it, what is more than, for example, the EGI check-in, which already is based on Keycloak, and it supports or it proxies all the federation, the identity federation that you can think of in Europe and elsewhere?
So the idea is that if one of the services that a data space has already been implemented supports technologies like Keycloak or EU logging, Simpl should be able to, in a seamless way, support these processes as well. Yeah? So basically, at this moment, if for AGI, this is something that is still working and it's already happening, what Simpl would provide at the moment is kind of a solution that should support as well these developments. Yeah, you need to think for new data spaces that are starting from scratch. There will be a solution for them that will support EU login, Keycloak for identity and trust, and for setting up catalogs. At the moment, what we are checking and what we're doing with Peter is to see how to set up this for the EOSC EU Node and how to enable first this node and then move on to see additional use cases for EOSC.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. Again, a round of applause, please. Our next presentation is going to be another remote one. Oh, there we go. Lovely. Hello, Dale. Dale Robertson from EGI, who was not able to travel today. So she's going to discuss an interesting topic, which at first glance is different from all the others. But if you think about it, in fact, it's very much connected to what Peter was describing in terms of credits and what Diego was describing in terms of integrated federated cloud capabilities. So this is a very specific discussion on that. So Dale, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and I hope you're now seeing my slides successfully. So I'm really sorry not to be with you today. I will run through this as quickly as I can since we are very short of time. This presentation is about exploring a funding mechanism similar to virtual access and its potential for use in EOSC. So what I want to go through is what EOSC Focus is doing about virtual access, what is the mechanism itself, and why we're studying it at all. And then have a look at some experience that's already been had over the last few years with its use as a funding mechanism. And then really the focus where I'd like to get to is what's the potential of a VA-like funding mechanism for future use in the context of EOSC. And I've got some questions that I wanted to use to gather some input from you, the audience. One of my lovely colleagues from EGI is in the room and is operating Mentimeter. So I've included the Menti code here up front so that because we're short of time, it's possible to perhaps collect some input from you. But just be a little bit careful that although I think the questions are open now, or the polls or whatever, you may need to listen to the presentation just to sort of get the context and, you know, get the proper gist of some of the questions. So what's EOSC Focus got to do with looking at a VA instrument? Basically, the EOSC Focus project supports the EOSC Association within the EOSC partnership. And there's a task within that which I participate in along with several other colleagues from different organisations, where we study financial mechanisms and funding models. In terms of virtual access, what we're looking at actually is an assessment of the potential of a funding mechanism like that used for virtual access for its use in EOSC. And the focus has been so far on looking at the experience mainly of the so-called 07 projects. And that's the reason for mentioning virtual access specifically. So it's been the experience of use in projects like C-Scale, DICE, EGI-ACE, and so on and so forth. So what is the mechanism? It's a financial instrument for a subset of calls within the Research Infrastructures Work Programme for use to reimburse providers for the cost of provisioning access to services or other resources. So it enables the use of the grant funding in a way that actually directly matches the actual cost of the resource provision. So in that sense, it does differ from what happens within a procurement, for example, the procurement of some of the service, well, all of the services in the EU Node. It's suitable for mature services. It's not something that would be for use for development work. Something I think to be clear about is that as a funding mechanism, this is not fundamentally intended for use to sustain resources. It's to widen use of resources to researchers who might not otherwise use them. And something else to stress is that the focus here in this presentation is on the financial instrument. It's not on the particular access type. So, you know, we could be talking about virtual access or transnational access or remote access. It doesn't really matter. The focus is on the type of financial instrument. So what is this mechanism? Sorry. That's better. Why are we looking at this? So EOSC is encouraging the secondary use of data and cross-disciplinary research. That entails access to resources outside of their primary user communities. So really, by definition, you're looking at cross-border or cross-domain activity. And I think, as is very well known, the issue this raises is that providers are typically funded for the provision of their services or their resources within their primary user communities. They're not currently funded usually for wider provision than that. And so the question is, how do you fund this wider provision, which would essentially be stimulated by EOSC? And for that, we're interested in whether virtual access or that type of funding mechanism could be a good candidate to try to sort of respond to this challenge. This type of financial instrument we think actually is worth looking at because at least within the specifications of any particular call that it would currently be offered under within the work programme, the resources or the services are open, they're free at the point of use for the users. And the funding is targeted at making resources available beyond their primary user communities. So there are, you know, some basic characteristics there that mean that it is at least sort of going in something of the right direction. So what we've looked at within EOSC Focus so far is experience of using VA particularly within EOSC Hub and within these 07 projects, as I've mentioned. And broadly speaking, what the experience showed was that the services that were experimented with, they did see a significant increase in usage. But there are issues that providers need to be able to recover their full marginal cost of service provision. So if capital costs, for example, are not permissible, then essentially the service provider or the resource provider can't recoup their full costs, and it's just not a realistic form of provision, really. It's not really sustainable for them. There are significant overheads in terms of the service coordination, but also the calculation of the costs, whether actual costs or unit costs, and all the reporting of all of that. It was new, certainly in EOSC Hub, it was new to providers to be gathering the service usage data as well, and that was not automated. So again, a lot of work. On the right-hand side, these are my words summarising what I have understood is really the experience of the 07 project. So I think overall, inflexible but useful, and it did work quite well in general terms. It is good for sustaining cross-border or cross-domain use of resources, access to resources. It is important for the capital costs to be made eligible within the calls. And for the time being, there isn't a better alternative. So actually, it would be very useful and worthwhile to continue the use of VA funding. I've said most of what's on this slide already, so I'm going to skip it. Essentially, there's a high admin burden involved, and there's issues with inflexibility in terms of its use so far. I just want to focus on one point in the bottom corner here, suitability for data services. There's a question here which is not the focus of this presentation, but I don't think it should be ignored. Data services, so at the moment, virtual access has usually been used for short-term use, so within a project of maybe 2 or 3 years or something like that. When it comes to the use of data services, that's not necessarily sufficient. There needs to be some thought about what the longer-term data storage solutions would be that would be complementary to that. So, as I say, it's not the focus for today, but it's not a point that should just be completely ignored. So I wanted to make sure it was included. Right, now, this is the point I wanted to get to. This is really the focus of the talk. So what's the potential for this type of mechanism for its use in EOSC? And I'd like to get your input about this. So on the next slide, which is my last slide, I have a summary of the questions that you may have already seen now in Menti. So could a funding mechanism like this, like virtual access, be provided on a longer term basis? So thinking about potentially, let's say, rather than as part of a project, could it be part of a programme, like if EOSC in the future became some form of European partnership, such as a joint undertaking or whatever? Could you look at some type of VA type mechanism that lasts for a period of 7 to 10 years instead of 2 to 3 years? And then within that, could EOSC then be allocating, for example, let's say a budget per resource type? So there'd be kind of buckets of funding that could be called off based on demand, essentially, to be shared across the resources of each type. Just to qualify that bullet, actually, it's we're not trying to imply that all usage of services arising or resources arising through EOSC should be necessarily funded by this type of mechanism. It's specifically focused here on the additional marginal costs arising through cross-border or cross-domain usage. That is the focus here, okay? And that does lead to the next 2 bullets, actually. So in terms of the offer of resources, there would be a need for some sort of transparent mechanism for how resources are selected to be offered under the virtual access model. So that could, for example, be demand-driven. That way, nobody is playing God and taking decisions on behalf of everybody else. But you would need the ability to track usage in a simple and clear manner. And you need to also, I think, improve the auditability of the information and the activity. On the consumption side, there would be a need to ensure that the funding was used for cases sort of as a last resort. So other possible funding options would be used up first before the virtual access type funding was consumed. How would that be done? Could it be automated? Is there any prospect of that? So then finally, really, there needs to be clarity on which resources could use virtual access. And the question I'd like to look at is, are there some resources which are just not suitable for this type of funding mechanism? Okay, final comment there, just to draw attention to the fact there is a distinction between the sustainability of resources in the long term and its use within EOSC to fund this additional marginal consumption. They're not necessarily the same two things exactly, but really when you think it through, how distinct are those two? Again, not the focus of this presentation, but not a point to be ignored. So here are the questions which you may or may not have already discovered in Menti. I'd really love to gather your input, but I'm conscious that we're very short of time. So if you can put your input into Menti, we'll leave it open for a while to gather as much as possible, and we'll read with great interest anything that you already respond to. And I'll hand back to Mark at this point to see where you want to go next, Mark. Thank you very much.
I myself cannot access it because I cannot get to this thing they call the internet, this interweb. You cannot get it. Yeah, that's the challenge for the people in this room, Dale. So just be aware that they'll have to go out into the corridor to make this happen. But I've got you all here. We are running a little bit late, but I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to potentially ask our group of assembled experts. Dale is on the line still. I don't know if Peter is still on the line. I think he may have dropped. Oh, look at that.
I haven't.
You haven't? Oh, well, good on you. Thank you. So are there any questions generally from the audience that that we might address to the panel more broadly? Yes, John, please share with us your question.
John Shepherdson, CESDA. Question for Daniel about Simpl. I looked in the Simpl GitLab repositories yesterday and found very little code, just mostly placeholder repositories. You said there was a launch, although I wasn't quite sure what, due in January. When will we have some open source code that we can use in EOSC Beyond to federate the nodes that we're building?
It's live. Go.
Okay, good. So yes, so the repository has been started to being populated. The main focus in terms of code right now is for business processes related to onboarding participants, setting up a catalog, searching within the catalog, adding resources to the catalog. The MVP will include, besides showcasing how Simpl should work and look like, will be as well the information on the repository. This is expected to be available end of the year for the MVP. What I would suggest here is you already have the possibility to see the high level requirements and the specifications on which functionalities, which user stories are we planning for the different processes. You could provide feedback on that side to say this is something that EOSC Beyond would be interested in. So the Simpl open team can start analyzing with additional requirements from other data spaces and try to include this on the pipeline. Yeah, I would say in the following weeks, months should be able to see more code on the repository. As I mentioned, the Simpl Live website is live. The Simpl website is live since 1 week. Mm-hmm. So we expect in the next weeks to populate it with more information.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, please? Yes, Yuri.
Okay, my question also to David. You mentioned in one black box in your slide, busy slide, that you don't have clear definition of data spaces and you want to cooperate with universities. is the first part of question. After that, I ask second.
Yes, so the European Commission kind of the main definition of a data space. However, the point is that this definition of data space has not been yet universally understood or at least implemented from different point of view. And that's because it's clear what's the idea of the data space: to enable sharing and data interoperability across providers and consumers. However, from different initiatives, it's difficult to say, okay, why the Data Spaces Support Center is setting up blueprints for supporting this process, and Simpl as a middleware for doing that. So that's kind of the way that Simpl could provide to have a more unified definition of a data space. The other part of the question I didn't get.
Second part is actually at University of Amsterdam we did almost 3 years research on data spaces. We came for definition of hierarchical model, whatever, what is required, what infrastructure required. After that, last year, looking at the status of development of data spaces, we decided to suspend this activity. So if we see that some development in area of data spaces produce something what can be transferred to academic courses, means competences, body of knowledge in different areas, scientific, we may restore this. But current, or at least status of the winter, we decided still to stop. Maybe you will accept this a kind of indication that in a direction of defining data spaces require defining the scientific area, defining the competences, defining the area of knowledge that we can teach students. It's my point of view from university.
Thanks for your point. And that's, as mentioned, that's why the Data Spaces Support Center is working on defining kind of such blueprints to support the development of data spaces. This is something we can check, and with the Data Spaces Support Center, they released a blueprint during this year with the basic components that a data space should have for being developed. From what I know from the Data Spaces Support Center is that this process includes as well feedback from the community, and this is something that could be taken into account and communicated for including additional requirements for the definition of a data space.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question, and that'll be the final question because we are running quite late. Raymond, if you could raise your hand so that Carla can find you.
Right. I have plenty of questions on Simpl, but I'll go to Peter for a bit if he has time for a question. So one of my main worries is that we have EOS placed in Horizon Europe, we have Simpl and other data spaces placed in Digital Europe, and we have research being funded through ERC, for example, Marie Curie, etc. programs. How is the EC going to ensure programmatic alignment between supply and demand in the different ecosystems that we're talking about here?
This is for Peter.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Indeed, we have the different funding instruments under the major term of digitalizing Europe, in a sense, which obviously include various industry segments and of course higher education and research. So the funding mechanisms are different because we, from a policy point of view, will like to encourage SMEs and commercials to invest more of their profit back to research and education. I think we are only at 2.5% of the target of 3% of European GDP to be invested in research and innovation. So we are lagging behind compared to other world regions as well. And the way how we do it is that we do not fund 100% the commercials. Of course, all the commercially oriented funding schemas are rather 50% or lower. Of course, when it gets to higher education and research and the not-for-profit institutions, we still maintain the 100% funding scheme, and these can be combined, right? So it could very well be that in certain programs, if you come together with commercials, the commercial partners are funded and according to this way, and the not-for-profit participant funded the other ways. So which is more towards 100%. So indeed, it is possible to combine these, although the funding instruments are what they are, right? So we have to find a way how these things are added. And in fact, we have multiple cases. EOSC is not just an example for that. We also have Destination Earth, if you wish, as an example, which is a primarily research-oriented platform for creating the digital twin of the Earth, participating by ESA, EUMETSAT, ECMWF, the large organizations. But it is running on partially on your HPC resources, which are stimulating SMEs and commercials to participate and bring their HPC applications and infrastructure into usage for the benefit of European industry and digitalization. So there are a lot of examples that are in the crossroads or interoperability parts of these, and we're making sure that these programs are indeed aligned.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Raymond. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to our speakers. If everybody could give a round of applause for their presentations. And that concludes this session. We're running a little late. I'm sure you're all eager for lunch. So carry on. And thank you once again. And please finish the Menti questions for Dale. She's desperate for your answers.